Well, I don't mind telling you that I had a difficult time this week deciding what I was going to talk about. There were several things running through my mind this week, and every time I tried to study and put something together on a certain subject, I always kept coming back to this one thing. And I was just kind of struggling with the Lord and telling Him that I didn't have enough time to prepare this one thing because it took some research and some time to dig out some answers. And so I'd go to this other thing and I'd try studying, and it seemed like it just wasn't coming together. And so I'd go back to this other one and I would study, and pretty soon, little by little, it came together. And I hope it's of an encouragement and strength to you today as I present it. What I'd like to talk about this morning is a city that is in the news almost every day. This city that I speak about this morning probably occupies the most important place in this whole world in the minds of Christians and non-Christians alike. This piece of real estate is less than a half mile on each of its four sides, and I'm not talking about the Vatican. The Vatican's more like a mile square, I think. Although the Vatican is very interested in this little city. This city is referred to as the City of Peace, although lasting peace has never been known within its borders. The area where this city is located has absolutely nothing to recommend itself as a desirable place to live. Although millions of people have died over the past 2,500 years in order to try to occupy and control this city. The city I speak about this morning is Jerusalem. That's almost correct. The city I speak about this morning is Old Jerusalem. It's really important for us to understand that there is an Old Jerusalem and that there is a New Jerusalem. And when I say New Jerusalem, I'm not talking about the one in Revelation that's going to come down from heaven someday after that 1,000 years is expired. I'm talking about the New Jerusalem that was established in 1860. It was a new section of town that was built right outside of Old Jerusalem. Today, Jews occupy and control New Jerusalem. But who occupies and controls Old Jerusalem? Palestinians, or the Arabs, or the Muslims control Old Jerusalem today. Since the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the one overpowering object of the Jews has been to take control of Old Jerusalem once again, to rebuild the temple, and to reinstitute their sacrificial worship service. For almost 2,000 years, the prayer of the true-hearted Jew has been next year in Jerusalem. But in 1967, something happened, and they no longer had to pray that prayer because they were there. You remember the Six-Day War that happened, 1967? I know you probably remember hearing something about that. I think everybody in this room was probably alive and knew what was going on in this world at that time. Because that very year, the Israelis gained military control over all Jerusalem, New Jerusalem and Old Jerusalem as well, in that Six-Day War. But as soon as Israel took that region, immediately they gave back the control of Old Jerusalem to the Arabs or to the Muslims. Why do you suppose they would do such a thing? When for nearly 2,000 years they've been praying next year in Jerusalem. But when they finally got it, immediately they gave it right back to the Muslims. I'll tell you why they did it. Because there's nearly 1 billion Muslims in the world. And if they didn't give back Old Jerusalem, they would have a very tough time on their hands. Well, let me read you something that was in Newsweek. This was July 24, 2000, speaking of this Six-Day War in 1967. When Israel captured these holy places in 1967, an Israeli flag was hoisted atop the Dome of the Rock. And I'm going to talk about the Dome of the Rock here in a little bit. But Moshe Dayan, the defense minister and architect of Israel's victory, ordered that the flag immediately be removed. Understanding that the area was a powder keg, Dayan returned control of the site to the Muslim administration. And so since 1967, the prayer of the true-hearted Jew has been not next year in Jerusalem, but next year where? In the Temple Mount. In the Temple Mount in Old Jerusalem. Because remember, their goal is to do what? Rebuild the temple and to reestablish their sacrificial worship service. That's their focus. That's their goal. And that has been for a long time now. We know a little bit about the Muslims, especially recently, right? With the terrorism that's been going on since September 11 and even before that. But the Jews understand that Muslims are willing to die for what they believe. Most people are not willing to give up their life for what they believe. But the Muslims are, and the Jews know it. And so that's why they gave back that Temple Mount in 1967 to the Muslims. You see, the Muslims have a mosque right on the top of the Temple Mount. It's called the Dome of the Rock. And it was built by a Turkish sultan in the 7th century. And so you can see they've been there a long time. The Muslims have had control of that area for a long, long time. Under this rock, this dome rather, there is a massive rock. It's about 50 to 60 feet in diameter, and it's almost perfectly flat. And it used to be used in Old Testament times as the place where the altar of sacrifice used to be. This is where Abraham offered his son Isaac when it was called Mount Moriah, same place. This is where Solomon's temple was built. And when it was destroyed later on, that was where Herod's temple was built. And so you can see there's a lot of history behind that one spot and the sacredness behind that one spot in the minds of a lot of people today. One day, as the Muslim legend goes, Muhammad was praying on that very rock. And according to what they believe, Muhammad was carried to heaven by the angel Gabriel. And so that's a very sacred and a holy spot for Muslims today. And so there are 3 world religions today who consider that area of the world a very holy land. Christians believe that it's sacred because Jesus walked its streets. And also because they believe that it still holds significance as far as future Bible prophecy is concerned. It's sacred and holy to the Jews because that's the last place that the Shekinah glory of God dwelt. And they believe will dwell again as soon as their prayer of next year in the Temple Mount is answered. And the Muslims also believe it's a holy place for the reasons I've already mentioned. But make no mistake, the Jews want the Temple Mount. That is their goal. The question is, will they achieve their goal? I don't even think the Jews can go to the Wailing Wall today. You know where the Wailing Wall is? The Wailing Wall is part of Old Jerusalem. And they used to be able to go there and pray. And I don't think they can now, but they might be able to. But there was a point in time, at least, where they could not go. In fact, the Muslims, from the top of the wall, used to throw garbage on the top of the Jews down at the bottom of the Wailing Wall. That was the most sacred place for them because that was the closest they could get to the Temple Mount. Let me ask you a couple questions. And I don't want you to answer any of these questions. I'm going to read these questions through twice, so you're going to know what the questions are. And then the second time through, I'm going to ask you to show your hand. Question number 1. Do you believe the Jews will occupy the Temple Mount once again before Jesus comes, rebuild their temple, and reinstitute their sanctuary service? Question 2. Do you believe the Jews will not occupy the Temple Mount? They will not build their temple, and they will not reinstitute their service. Question number 3. How many of you honestly don't know whether they will or not? Okay? Question number 1. Will the Jews ever occupy the Temple Mount, rebuild their temple, and reinstitute their worship service? Will they ever do that? Second question, the Jews will not rebuild their temple. They will never occupy the Temple Mount, and they will never reinstitute their worship service. How many of you don't know? Okay. I think the ones who believe that they will not had the biggest showing of hands. There's a lot of confusion about this subject today. In fact, it's been something that's been on my mind for several years. And I'll share a scripture here with you pretty soon. There's very little commentary that you can find on this subject that we're talking about today, except as you will find different ideas about what the people think is going to happen or not happen. But I believe God has an answer. Let me ask you another question. Do the Jews still consider themselves the chosen people of God? Yes. Without a doubt. More importantly, do most Christians today believe that the Jews are still blessed and chosen of God? Yes, they do. Unfortunately, they do. And because of this misunderstanding, it's led to all kinds of false conclusions, with lots of dollars and lots of energy being put forth in the wrong direction today. And many people will be eternally lost because of these erroneous conclusions. Now, because many important events have taken place in the past in that area of the world, many Christians today believe that it is still a holy land. Now, when we talk about that area of the world, we still may refer to it as the Holy Land. But is it a holy land? No, it is not. And they also believe that God is going to do a special work for the Jews right at the end of time before Jesus comes in the clouds of heaven. And the one verse that they seize upon the most in an effort to try to support their theories about that part of the world being a holy land and that the Jews are God's special object of mercy, they use this verse. It is Luke 21. You've probably read this before. I've read it many times, but I really didn't understand what it meant. Luke 21:24. This is Jesus speaking. Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now, the popular interpretation of that verse is that sometime in the near future, after God has done everything that He can do to save all the Gentiles before the rapture, that the Jews will have another opportunity, that they'll have a second chance, that they'll have a second probation to accept Christ. Here's how the sequence of events go according to this popular view. We are now living, they say, in the time of the church age. And That's okay. We are living in the time of the church age right now, aren't we? But it's not the church age that we understand and believe is not what they understand and believe. And I'm not going to go into details of that right now, but I just want to show you the sequence. We're living in the church age right now, soon to be followed by the secret rapture. Then comes the 7 years of tribulation for those who weren't ready at the rapture. During the tribulation, the 7 seals of Revelation will be unsealed. The 7 trumpets will sound. The 7 last plagues will be poured out. And 144,000 Jewish evangelists will receive the latter rain of the Holy Spirit, and they will go out and do a work and convert more souls than all previous history combined. That sounds a little bit like universalism. You know what universalism is? In other words, almost everybody is going to be saved in the end. The only one that's going to be thrown into the lake of fire is the devil and his angels, and maybe really bad people like Hitler or Osama bin Laden, you know, those kind of people. But almost everybody is going to be saved. This is the teaching that is being spread across this whole country and the whole world today through movies, through books, through videos, and through thousands of churches. Have you ever heard of the recent movie called Left Behind? It was, I guess, a Hollywood movie type of thing. It was at the theater. And millions of people went to see Left Behind. It was all about the secret rapture and how all those things are going to happen. And whether those people that went and listened and saw believed it or not, it made an impression upon their mind. And so this is being taught far and wide today. Just this week, I went to Walmart. Months before, I was in Walmart, and you've probably been there too. They have a section right in the front of the store where they sell books. Bibles, religious, they have all kinds. They have a bunch of Mormon books and all kinds of things in there. And so I was browsing through there a couple months ago, and I noticed they had one of these books, Left Behind. And because I wanted to see exactly what these people believe, I decided I was going to go back to Walmart and spend a little time looking through some of their books. And I found some really interesting things. In fact, they had charts all laid out as to how each thing is going to happen, just like I told you a few moments ago. And I noticed that these books in this one section were all written by 2 men, Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. They wrote no less than 16 books in the last 6 years explaining the prophecies of Revelation and last day events. And these books are this thick, 16 of them in the last 6 years. So you know they've been busy. And their false doctrine is sweeping the Christian world today. And this one verse right here in Luke 21:24, rightly understood, will forever put to rest the false notion that the Jews will have another opportunity to take this gospel to the world. And really, that's what it is when you stop to think about it, isn't it? If 144,000 Jewish evangelists are going to receive the latter rain, all the Jews are going to have another chance, and even those Gentiles that missed out on the first time are going to have another chance. And so they're the ones that are going to take the gospel to the world after they accept Christ. If you still have your Bibles open there to Luke 21, let's take a little closer look at this verse. First of all, what's the context of this chapter? Luke 21. Last day events, isn't it? It's just like Matthew 24 and Mark 13. It's dealing with last day events and the things that Jesus said was going to happen before he returned to this earth. In verse 20, it says, "And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh." Now, is Jesus using some mysterious symbolic language here? Or is this literal history that he's talking about? It's literal history. We're talking about literal Jerusalem here. There's no symbology whatsoever. These things happen just like Jesus said they would. Verse 21, "Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Now I want you to notice that word fulfilled. All things that are written, where? In the Old Testament, really, is what that was talking about, at least at this point, will be fulfilled. All the things that God said was going to happen concerning Jerusalem were going to be fulfilled. Verse 23. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people, Israel, the Jews. And they, that is, those who fail to heed Christ's words to flee that doomed city, shall fall by the edge of the sword. Did that happen? Yes. In fact, I was reading Josephus just the other day. You know, he was a Jew, he was a historian. And he could see what was going on. And he knew that the Jews didn't have a prayer of keeping their temple against the Roman army. And so he begged those Jews to come out and surrender. And if they did, they would not be killed. But the Jews, no way. In fact, they threw darts or arrows at Josephus to try to kill him for pleading with them. And as I read a little further, Josephus says that in his estimation, there were about 1,100,000 Jews killed during that siege of Jerusalem. Can you imagine how many people 1,100,000 is? Do you realize that at one time, Jerusalem and that whole surrounding area was a forest? It isn't today. It's like desert. And you know why? Josephus goes on to say that within about a 12-mile radius of Jerusalem, they cut down all the trees to make crosses to hang the Jews on. Those crosses were so close together that you could hardly walk between them. Gives you just a little idea of how many Jews were killed in that surrounding area and what that area must have looked like. They shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And so those who weren't killed right on the spot, either hung on the cross or destroyed as they entered the temple to destroy that temple, they were taken captive and scattered throughout all the nations. And that's the way it is today, isn't it? Same situation exists today. The Jews are everywhere, scattered. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now we're going to look at that last phrase a little more closely here in just a minute, but I want to look at a few texts in the Old Testament just to see if what Jesus said here agrees with what God said in the Old Testament as to what was going to happen to the Jews. Go to Jeremiah chapter 9 and verse 17. Jeremiah chapter 9 and verse 17. I will scatter them also among the heathen, whom neither they nor their fathers have known, and I will send a sword after them till I have consumed them. Go to Hosea chapter 9. Hosea is that little book right after the book of Daniel. Chapter 9 and verse 17. Hosea 9:17. My God will cast them away because they did not hearken unto him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations. Now go to Ezekiel. That's just before Daniel. Ezekiel 4:13. And the Lord said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, everywhere they are, even in Jerusalem. You know, the Jews occupy New Jerusalem, and the Muslims occupy Old Jerusalem. But even within Old Jerusalem, there is a Christian quarter, there is a Muslim quarter, there is a Jewish quarter, even in Old Jerusalem. But the Muslims rule the mount, the important spot. And so the Jews are eating their defiled bread, even to this day, being surrounded by Gentiles. And what is a Gentile? Anybody that's not a Jew. Doesn't matter if you're Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist or whatever you are, you're a Gentile. They're surrounded by them. Go to Ezekiel 23. I lifted up my hand unto them also in the wilderness, and I would scatter them among the heathen and disperse them through the countries. Go to Ezekiel 36 and verse 19. 36:19. And I scattered them among the heathen, and they were dispersed through the countries according to their way and according to their doings I judged them. Let's look at one more in Amos. Amos is that hard to find little book after Daniel. Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos. Amos 9 and verse 9. For lo, I will command, and I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, like as corn is sifted in a sieve. Yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth. And so you know what a sieve is. I think of that little thing that Cindy has at home where you put the flour in and you turn the crank, and it makes it fine. And I can just see God dumping all the Jews in there and just all over the place, all over the world. They're scattered. They're dispersed today, and they still remain that way. Now go back to Luke 21, and we'll do a little word study on some of these words in the last part of this verse, where it says, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. We've already determined that Jerusalem is literal Jerusalem here. Shall be trodden down. I looked up the word trodden. It's an action word for tread. It means to set the foot or step or walk on, literally. Down. Down means under or beneath. And so their feet, Jerusalem is going to be under their feet, the Holy Mount, Old Jerusalem. Of the Gentiles, and we already determined who the Gentiles are. Anybody that is not a Jew is a Gentile. Until the times. I looked up the word until even. It's a word denoting the end of a particular period of time. And the word times means accomplished, completed, end, and expired. And so, literal Jerusalem shall be literally walked upon by non-Jews until a particular period in time or when a certain event takes place. They're going to continue to do that until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. That's what the word fulfill means. It means something that's completed, something that's finished, something that's over. And so that the Gentiles are going to be allowed to walk in that most holy place of the Temple Mount until a specific time or until a specific event takes place. And so in the mind of the Jew, we're talking defilement here of their holy land. That's what the word trodden down indicates. They're defiling. It's being defiled. What the Jews consider holy, God has made unholy because of their disobedience. Their house was left desolate of God's presence and given to non-Jews to desecrate. And how long will they do this? They'll do it for a set time, and they will do it until a specific event would take place. Has that event taken place? Obviously not, because it's still happening today. If you had the money and the desire to do so, you could buy a plane ticket, and within a few days, few weeks, however long it would take to make the arrangements, you, as a tourist, could be walking all over the Temple Mount as a Gentile. If you wanted to do that, you could. And so it's still going on today. And so it has not been fulfilled yet. And yet there are some who believe that that Six-Day War in 1967 was a fulfillment of this right here. How could it be? And the biggest proof that it isn't fulfilled is because Gentiles are still treading down the Holy Mount today. Now, go to our scripture reading of Ezekiel 21. And this is a good way to remember these texts. It's in Luke 21 and Ezekiel 21. They're companion texts here. One explains the other. Ezekiel 21 and verse 25. And thou profane, wicked prince of Israel. And this is talking about Hezekiah. He was the last king of Israel. He was the one who was in power the first time the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. He rebelled against Babylonian rule in violation of God's command through his prophets, because the prophets said, you need to allow yourselves to be taken captive. This is your punishment for disobedience. But the Jews said, no, we're not going to be taken captive by Babylon. And because they rebelled against what God told his prophet, the end of their rule came to an end here. You'll see that as we continue. And thou profane, wicked prince of Israel, whose day is come. You can read about that in Jeremiah 52. I'm not going to take the time. When iniquity shall have an end, thus saith the Lord God, remove the diadem and take off the crown. And so this was the beginning of the end for Israel to rule their own land by themselves or by their king. From then on, they would be ruled by a heathen power or by the Gentiles. This shall not be the same. In other words, everything was going to be changed from this point on. Exalt him that is low and abase him that is high. The Jews were high, weren't they? They were God's people. They were high, highly exalted. But because they were disobedient, they became low. And the ones who were low, the heathen, became high over them and ruled over them. Verse 27, I will overturn it. What is it? Old Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. That was the place, that was the center of their worship. That was what he was going to overturn. And it shall be no more. The glory of God would depart until he come whose right it is, and I will give it him. Who would that be? Talking about Jesus here. The crown removed from Israel passed successively to the kingdoms of Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome. God says, it shall be no more until he come whose right it is, and I will give it him. Now, we know that of those four world kingdoms, Rome was the last. And it was divided into 10 parts, represented by the 10 toes. And what is the next kingdom then after the downfall of Rome, according to Daniel 2? Christ's kingdom, that stone that was cut out without hands and came and smote the image and broke it in pieces. That's the next thing to happen. And so never again would the Jews rebuild their temple. Never again would they offer animal sacrifices upon their altar in their Temple Mount. And why? Why? Main reason why they will not do that, other than because God said so. That system served its purpose. What happened when Jesus hung on the cross and died? The veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to the bottom, signifying that the sacrificial system was at an end. It was not going to be instituted again. By the way, do you know why the Jews refuse to offer animal sacrifice today according to how they were told to do it in the Old Testament? Have you ever wondered about that? I've wondered lots of times. If they don't believe in Jesus as the Messiah, then the only way they can have their sins forgiven is to offer an animal, but they don't do it. Why? Listen to what a Bible teacher said after he visited a Jewish synagogue about 40 years ago. While there, I asked the rabbi why the Jews do not sacrifice the lamb at Passover and the goat on the Day of Atonement. In pained solemnity, the rabbi replied that the Jewish people could never again sacrifice the lamb and the goat at their annual services until they had returned to Jerusalem and rebuilt the temple on the Temple Mount. That is why they do not offer animal sacrifice today. You see, the Jews understand that the Temple Mount was the place that was dedicated and blessed by God. No other place will suffice. And so it has to be that spot. And that's why they are so intent on regaining control and rebuilding their temple. But even though the Jews have returned to Jerusalem, they're there today. But they really haven't returned to Jerusalem until they have control of the Temple Mount and are able once again to reinstitute their worship service and build their temple. Now notice, go back to Ezekiel 21:27. Let's look at this a little more closely here too. Verse 27. I will overturn it, O Jerusalem, and it shall be no more until he come whose right it is, and I will give it him. Now that word overturn, it's not a coincidence that that word was used by Ezekiel 3 times. Jerusalem was besieged and conquered the first time in 722 BC. But the Jews eventually made their way back and reinstituted their worship service once again. Then Jerusalem was conquered again, and the first temple, Solomon's temple, was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. But after a little while, they came back. And they rebuilt the temple, Herod's temple, it's referred to. They reinstituted their worship service. Once again, they were back. And the third and last time was in 70 AD, when Titus came in and he destroyed that temple for the last time. From that time on, the Jews did not come back to rebuild the temple or to reinstitute their worship service. That was it. I will overturn it, God said 3 times, and he did just what he said. From the last overturning, they have never been able to recover, and they never will recover. And they will never worship again on the Holy Mount. As a nation, God gave the Jews 3 opportunities to get it right, and they blew it every time. They especially blew it the last time, didn't they? Why did God destroy the temple the last time? What was the basic reason there? Not only were they disobedient, but what did they do? They crucified the Son of God. That was the last straw. From then on, it was over for the Jews. Their probation as a nation was closed. Now, that does not mean that individual Jews cannot be saved, but their national structure was forever swept away. Jesus predicted that the Jews would not return to the Temple Mount until the Gentiles stopped walking on it. And it's clear that that has not happened. And it's not going to happen until Jesus comes. Then, after 1,000 years, Jesus is going to come the 3rd time to level the place where Old Jerusalem now stands and prepare it for what? The New Jerusalem that's going to come down from God out of heaven. That's the Jerusalem that will never be trodden underfoot of the Gentiles. because all the worshipers there will be of the seed of Abraham and heirs according to the promise. Spiritual Israelites only will worship on the Temple Mount at that time. Old Jerusalem never will be built up. Never. And so don't worry about what's going on in the Middle East. The descendants of Isaac and Ishmael will be at war and will be fighting over the Temple Mount until all of them call for the rocks and the mountains to fall on them and hide them from the face of him whose right it is to allow the saints to inherit the real Holy Land, the New Jerusalem. And my prayer is that every one of us here in this room today will be there. If we're doing what we need to do now in preparing our character and giving the message that we were raised up to give, we will be there in that New Jerusalem, that real Holy Land, and that's where I want to be. How about you?